Hey everyone, this is Chanchal again. Now, in this video, it will be a part of a series where we will discuss how groups influences consumer behavior. So in this video, we're not going to talk about how we are influenced by other individuals or groups that we will do in some other video. But in this video, we are just going to learn about the different types of group that we belong to, right? So one way that we can classify groups that we belong to are based on whether they are primary groups or secondary groups. So primary groups are usually small, informal groups. Now you can take an example of the family that you belong to, your close-knit family, your group of friends from school or from work. So primary groups are generally where the group is small and very, very close and informal. They interact with each other more frequently, and they are also more emotionally connected with each other. And generally, they last a very long time as well. So when we talk about secondary groups, they are generally groups that we associate ourselves with because there is a common goal that we want to accomplish, right? So if we have a common goal, then we form a secondary group. Now, secondary groups are generally less frequent in terms of our interactions with each other. There is less emotional attachment with other members of the community, and they are also very generally for short term only. So, for example, if you take some of your class projects that you work on and there is a team that you work with together, then it's an informal group. This class itself that you take, where you are attending the class together with other members, is also an informal group and can be considered a secondary group as well because it's not long term. The interaction frequency is not that high, and then it's geared towards achieving a certain goal, right? So primary groups are groups that are generally formal, they interact with each other more frequently, there is more of an emotional bond, and then they are generally long term. Whereas secondary groups are generally groups that are geared towards achieving a specific objective that might be a common objective for all the group members. There might be less emotional attachment with each other, and at the same time, generally it's also very short term. Now, another way to classify groups is in terms of our reference groups as well. So reference groups are groups that generally we use as benchmark and something that we look up to or compare ourselves against, right? So reference group can be primary groups or they can be secondary groups. So for example, now I'm a 40-year-old and let's say I make $50,000 a year, right? So a reference group might be other 40-year-olds and how much they make. So if I look at other 40 years old as a reference group and then I see that they are making $100,000 a year, then I would say that I'm not doing as well. But if I use a 40-year-old reference group in which the people are only making $30,000 a year, then I would consider myself as being doing really well, right? So reference group is the reference against which you measure yourself. So if you look at high school students, maybe they use cheerleaders as a reference group, right? So when the cheerleaders are so popular and they are so happy, you kind of start to think that maybe I also need to become popular, right? So reference groups are groups that you refer yourself against. You compare yourself against reference groups. Now let's take an example. Now you've left your family, you've joined the college, right? And as a new student, you might use older and most probably wiser, according to your own thoughts, college students as reference groups to form your attitude about different professors, about different topics, about politics, about what to wear, is there global warming happening or not, how much alcohol should you drink, what music you should listen to, what restaurants to visit locally. Now, all of those questions you will find an answer to based upon who you are referring against. So your reference group will have an influence on the types of things that you value and what you think you should be doing. So when talking more about reference groups, there are three types of reference groups that we should know about. An aspirational reference group is a group that we look up to, right? So it's a group that we aspire to become a part of. So for example, for some high school students, you may want to become a cheerleader. So the cheerleader are like an aspirational groups for you. So as part of a kid, I always wanted to be one of the popular kids in school. So they were my aspirational group, right? So some people here in the United States want to become basketball players or football players, and they look up to those players, and those are going to be your reference groups. Whereas kids in India grow up watching a lot of cricketers, and then maybe the cricketers is the reference groups that they want to belong to. Now, another type of reference groups are associative reference groups. So the associative reference groups are groups that we think are equal to us, right? So for example, our co-workers, our neighbors, the people in our church, maybe we consider them as equal. A disassociative reference group, on the other hand, is a group that we don't want to be a part of, or we don't want to see ourselves as being seen to be a part of, right? So for example, we can see a lot of some political example would be like, if you are a Republican, then you may not want to be seen as a supporter of Democrats, and at the same time, if you are a Democrat, then you don't want to be seen as a supporter of a Republican group. So these are dissociative reference groups where you don't want yourself to become a part of that reference group. So I hope this makes it clear the different types of groups that we belong to, and as I said, in some other video we will discuss what are the type of influences that these different groups may have on us and our behavior as consumers. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good day.